I stood there holding the envelope they left for me under the Christmas tree, thinking it was a card. But it wasn't. It was a legal notice. I'd been cut out of the will, no warning, no explanation, just erased. I'm Harper, and this is the story of how I turned the worst Christmas gift of my life into something none of them saw coming. What would you do if your own family decided you weren't worth keeping? Let me take you through what happened next. I'm Harper Lane, and I hope you'll stay for the story. The envelope under the tree. The moment I pulled into the circular driveway, I knew something was off. Not the kind of, oh no, they overcooked the ham again kind of off, no. This was heavier, thicker in the air, like the silence before a thunderstorm. My parents' house, or should I say estate, looked picture perfect as always. Twinkling lights traced every gable, every pillar, even the wrought iron gate. Everything was staged to impress, as if better homes and gardens had a grudge against minimalism. I parked, killed the engine, and just sat there for a second watching the lights flicker off the frozen fountain sculpture in the front yard. God, even the damn water feature was dressed up for Christmas. I took a breath, then another, then stepped out into the cold. Inside, the scent of cinnamon-polished wood and judgment hit me all at once. Logan was the first to look up. My brother stood by the fire, stiff in his tailored suit glass of bourbon in hand, like he belonged in a Wall Street reboot. "Harper," he said flatly, not like he was happy to see me, but like I was a calendar notification he forgot to dismiss. "Logan," I smiled just as fake. "Still dressing like your LinkedIn profile pic, I see." He didn't laugh. He never did. Mom appeared next, descending the grand staircase in a burgundy velvet dress and heels too high for anyone not trying to win a silent war. Her smile was the kind that never reached her eyes. "There she is," she said, "our little artisan." She dragged out the word like it had 3 extra syllables. I ignored the jab. "Merry Christmas, Mom." Yes, Merry." Dad was already in the living room by the tree. He didn't stand, just nodded once. No warmth, no welcome, just acknowledgement. And then I saw it. A white envelope tucked under the tree near the base. Not wrapped, no bow, just my name, Harper, written in crisp, mechanical lettering, like a warning. "What's that?" I asked, already knowing they wanted me to ask. "Oh," Mom said, lightly swirling her wine, "just something we thought you should have. Sooner rather than later." I glanced at Logan. He shifted, looked away. I picked it up. The paper was thick, heavy in my hand. My pulse slowed, then surged, and when I slid my finger under the seal and pulled the contents free, the world got quiet. I didn't speak right away. I just stared at the words, trying to make them mean something else. They didn't. "You're removing me from the will." My voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. But inside, my chest was caving in like a house with termites. "It's not personal, Harper," Dad said, his voice cold-clipped. "It's practical." Mom sipped her wine. "You made your choices, sweetheart. You chose art," Logan added, stepping forward, "instead of something stable, something with structure, legacy." I looked at each of them slowly, my family, my blood, and in that moment they felt like strangers at a funeral I didn't know I was attending. "I chose to start my own business," I said, "to create something real, something mine." "A candle shop," Dad scoffed. "A handcrafted candle studio," I corrected, firmer now. "And yeah, it's small, but every customer, every sale that's mine, I built that." Mom didn't even look at me. "You chose being small." "No," I whispered, then raised my voice. "I chose to live big on my own terms. You just couldn't see it." Silence. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the background, Bing Crosby sang about a white Christmas, and it felt like a sick joke. I folded the paper slowly, my hands steady, even though my whole body was screaming to run, to yell, to cry, but I didn't do any of those things. I looked at all of them and I smiled. Not because I was okay, because something inside me had just snapped into place. "You just gave me the push I needed," I said calmly, walking to the door. I grabbed my coat from the rack, slid it over my shoulders. As I reached for the handle, I turned just for a second and met my mother's eyes. "Trust me," I said, my voice soft but razor sharp. "You'll remember this Christmas forever." And then I walked out into the cold, into the night, into something entirely mine. Outside, snow drifted lazily onto the lawn like powdered sugar over a fake dessert. I didn't know exactly what I was walking into, but for the first time in a long time, I knew what I was walking away from. The bell above my studio door jingled as I pushed it open with my hip arms full of gift bags no one would ever open. My heels clicked against the wood floors like a metronome, counting down the seconds until I fell apart. The place was warm, not just because of the heaters humming in the corners, but because it smelled like orange peel smoke and a little bit of stubborn hope. This was mine. Citrus and smoke. I dropped the bags onto the front counter like they were full of bricks. A string of fairy lights buzzed softly behind the mason jar display, and my newest candle, Clove Plus Reckoning, flickered beside a stack of handwritten thank you notes from customers. I didn't cry until I heard Theo's voice. "Well, that's a dramatic entrance," he said from the back, his hands covered in glaze and clay dust. "You storm out of a Christmas dinner or a job interview." I blinked at him, then laughed. And just like that, the tears fell. "Oh," he said, dropping the towel over his shoulder and walking toward me. "You did storm out of a Christmas dinner." It wasn't a storm, I sniffed, pulling off my coat. It was more like a calm apocalypse. He raised a brow. "You okay? Nope?" He handed me a mug peppermint tea with oat milk the way I liked it. I took a sip, leaning against the workbench, my body finally letting the adrenaline crash like a wave. They cut me out, Theo, of the will, my own parents. Gave me the papers under the tree like it was a freaking stocking stuffer. He didn't respond right away. He just pulled up a stool beside me, letting the silence sit long enough to be respectful, but not so long it became unbearable. Then he said, "That's the most on-brand holiday move your family's ever made." I barked out a laugh, short, bitter, but real. "You know the best part," I added. "They said I chose to be small, that I walked away from legacy." Theo leaned back, arms crossed. "Right. Because nothing screams legacy like emotionally blackmailing your own daughter at Christmas." "They've never taken me seriously," I muttered. "Not the candle business, not the studio, not the orders, the wait lists, the collaborations. None of it." Theo grinned. "You were on the freaking Etsy hot list, twice. Exactly, I threw up my hands. I'm literally shipping product to Sweden right now, and my dad still calls it your hobby." He stood up, walking over to the wall of drying ceramic vessels. "So, what now?" That question sat heavy in the air. I didn't know. I was tired, angry, but not broken, not even close. Something inside me had clicked into gear the moment I walked out of their house. And then I remembered something, a folder, old and dusty, crammed in the back of my filing cabinet, one I hadn't looked at in years. "Wait," I said slowly, standing up. "Give me a second." I rushed to the back storage room, flipped open drawers, shoved aside receipts, scraps, scent samples until I found it. An old manila envelope labeled H. Lane, Trust Agreement, 2015. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Theo watched me from the doorway. "What is it? Something my dad gave me to sign when I was in college," I said. "Said it was for future financial planning." I didn't read it. I just signed. I unfolded the pages, scanned, skimmed, stopped. There, paragraph 3B. "This agreement designates the property located at 712 Waverly Avenue, Austin, TX, known as the Montgomery Gallery, as belonging to Harper Lane in full until otherwise declared." I stared at it, pulse thudding. "Holy hell," I whispered. "It's still in my name." Theo blinked. "Wait, the old art gallery downtown? That place has been closed since, forever." "I thought they sold it," I said. "But this says otherwise." I grabbed my laptop and typed the address into Google Maps. The street view loaded slowly, and then there it was. Faded signage, boarded windows, weeds pushing through sidewalk cracks like they had something to prove, abandoned, but still mine. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered. Theo came around and stared at the screen with me. "You've been sitting on a downtown property for 7 years? I literally used to walk past it and think it was cursed real estate." We looked at each other, then back at the screen, then at each other again. "You know what this means, right?" he said. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, It means I've got space. A long pause passed between us. Then I whispered more to myself than to him. If they think cutting me off would kill me, they forgot one thing. Theo tilted his head. What's that? I smiled, slow and dangerous. I've got fire and a lease in my name. I parked 2 blocks away. Not because there wasn't room, there was plenty, but because I needed the walk. I needed those extra steps to steady my breath, to listen to the crunch of gravel under my boots, and to remind myself that I wasn't here to mourn what could have been. I was here to claim what could still be. Theo caught up beside me, balancing 2 lattes and a flashlight like some kind of caffeinated adventurer. You know, most people start new business ventures with a spreadsheet, he said. I'm not most people, I muttered, pushing my hood back as the wind caught it. The building loomed ahead, forgotten, and gray, a concrete skeleton of something once beautiful. The letters Montgomery Gallery still clung to the brick in faded bronze, cracked and chipped like they were holding on for dear life. We stood in silence for a beat. Looks haunted, Theo said. Good, I replied. Ghosts have taste. He laughed under his breath and handed me my coffee. Let's go meet them then. The front door took effort, the kind that makes your shoulder pop just enough to remind you you're not 20 anymore. Inside, the smell hit us immediately. Old varnish, dust, mold, regret, the kind of air that clings to failure. I flicked on the flashlight and swept the beam across the gallery. High ceilings, skylights cracked but still breathing in faint sunlight, empty wall mounts, shattered bulbs. A broken ceiling fan spun lazily like it forgot how to die properly. Wow, Theo whispered. It's worse than I remembered, I said, but he asked, already hearing the shift in my tone. But I can see it. He looked at me, then looked around. Okay, walk me through it. I stepped into the center of the room, the dust kicking up in tiny ghosts around my boots. Picture this, I said. Candle shelves lining that wall, handmade ceramics, reclaimed wood stands. A workshop table here in the center, big enough for 6, maybe 8 artists to work at once. A scent bar in the back where people can create their own blends. And here I turned, gesturing to the alcove beneath the old skylight, a retail nook. Local goods, curated, ethical, rotating monthly. Theo's eyes widened. An artisan collective? I nodded. A living, breathing community space, not just for me, for people like me, people who chose to be small. Who got written off? Damn, he whispered. It's crazy enough to work. There was a long pause, the good kind. Then reality crashed back in. Only problem is, I've got like $3 and a cinnamon stick in my bank account, I said, half joking. Theo leaned against a beam. You have savings, don't you? I did. I sipped my coffee, used it all on the last production run. I thought this Christmas would spike orders. I didn't know they'd cut me off. You could apply for a grant, he offered. Startup loan, maybe. I shook my head. No loans. Not after how they treated me. I don't want anything I can't own completely. He went quiet for a second, then smirked. Well, you may not have Wall Street backing you, but you do have TikTok. I blinked. What? He pulled out his phone, typed something, and flipped it toward me. My jaw dropped. 173,842 likes, 10,027 shares, over 500 comments. A creator named @ChaoticHerbGirl had posted an unboxing of my Midnight Citrus candle set. She said your scent made her feel like a sexy witch at a book club, Theo added, which I think is a compliment. I grabbed his phone. Wait, scroll down. Are these all orders? He nodded. And they're still coming in. I stared at the screen. My heart thudded in my ears. That's real money, I whispered. That's rent, permits, paint. Hell, that's display lighting. Theo grinned. You just went viral, Harper. Not because of your family name, not because of pity, but because your product's damn good. I walked over to the cracked wall near the front entrance, rested my hand against the cold, faded plaster. Maybe they thought they buried me, I said softly, but they just planted me deeper. Theo tilted his head. You know I've got tools right. Saws, sanders, probably enough extension cords to make OSHA nervous. I turned the grin pulling at my mouth for the first time all day. You in? He offered his hand. From ashes to assets, baby. I took it. Then I looked up at the broken rafters, the graffiti-tagged corners, the floor that sloped just slightly to the left. And I whispered more to the ghosts than anyone else, I don't need their money. I took a breath, felt the fire in my chest catch again, the kind you don't blow out. I've got clicks, whacks, and rage. I turned to Theo, my best friend, my co-conspirator, my accidental business partner, and smiled like I'd just stepped into destiny. Let's build this place from scratch. The photo that changed everything was an accident. I'd been pouring wax in the back of the studio hair, up in a messy bun, oversized hoodie, stained with cinnamon oil, when Theo shouted, "Harper, don't move!" I froze. "Why, what am I on fire?" He snapped a photo. "No," he said, "but this shot might be." He was right. It was me standing in front of a half-unpacked shelf of candles with the words, "You're not in the will," hand-labeled in Sharpie across each jar. Behind me, the wall was still torn drywall and exposed beams. I was holding a blowtorch like I was about to go full DIY pyro. Theo posted it with a caption, "She got disinherited, so she made it scented." Hash candle with attitude hash burn toxic legacies. By the time I finished pouring the next batch, we had over 12,000 likes. By morning, we were viral. I called it the Flameproof Campaign. We renamed the candle officially You're Not in the Will Smoky Cedar Black Pepper, and a hint of orange zest. It smelled like rage and freedom. Then came the rest, Gaslight Me Again, eucalyptus ash and bourbon, generational trauma lavender and charred vanilla, family reunion NSFW rose petals and gunpowder. The comments flooded in. My mom gave this to me for Mother's Day. Iconic. Bought 5 of these for my sisters. We lit them together while burning Dad's old letters. This woman is my emotional support entrepreneur. I was stunned, grateful, furious, euphoric, all at once. I reinvested every dollar. The gallery became a war zone of paint plaster palettes and passion. Theo built shelving from salvage barnwood. I spray-painted slogans on the inside walls for motivation. Burn the blueprint. Build your own. You were never too much. They were just too small. We hosted a pop-up open house half-gallery preview, half-group therapy. People cried in the candle corner. A stranger brought homemade cookies. One woman left behind a note that just said, "Thank you for reminding me that I'm not broken, just reborn." Meanwhile, I started writing. Blog posts, threads, tiny manifestos about being the creative disappointment in a power-hungry family. I talked about toxic legacies, emotional eviction, and how to turn a breakdown into a business plan. It struck a nerve. I was invited onto podcasts, DM'd by life coaches. One guy offered me $10,000 to create a scent called Daddy Issues Deluxe. We politely declined. I was building something louder than candles, a community, a movement, and that's when he showed up. I was elbow deep in plaster and patchwork when I heard the front door creak, then slam halfway through like it hit a gust of attitude. "Excuse me," a voice called out, low, calm, and unexpectedly polite. "Are you the owner here?" I turned, probably looking feral. There stood a man in a city inspector vest, sleeves rolled clipboard in hand, soft green eyes that didn't flinch, even when he saw the cracked ceiling fan hanging by a thread. Depends, I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Are you here to condemn the place, or compliment it?" He smiled a small amused curl of the mouth. "Neither. I'm Noah Delaney, City Permits and Compliance. I'm the guy who makes sure you don't accidentally electrocute yourself, or build a candle empire on top of faulty wiring. Nice to meet you," I said, extending a wax-streaked hand. "I'm Harper, owner, founder, general chaos manager." He shook it without hesitation. I expected a lecture, maybe a smirk. Instead, he scanned the room slowly, like he was trying to picture what it could be, not what it was. "You've got vision," he said finally. "But you also have a cracked water line on the north wall, and that window," he pointed up, "is one good storm away from joining you for coffee." I sighed. I'm already barely holding this place together. "You're doing better than most," he replied. "At least you showed up. That's more than half the battle." He helped me brace the window that day. It wasn't in his job description. He did it anyway. And as we stood there, hands pressed to splintered wood eyes, squinting into afternoon light, he said it without pretense. "Looks like you're building more than a business here." I turned to him, hair-messy, heart-full hands bruised from labor and loss, and smiled. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's the plan." There are two kinds of silence when you walk into a room like that. The first is polite, the kind that says, "We see you, but we're too refined to comment." The second is sharp surgical, the kind that slices through your ribs and whispers, "You don't belong here. Guess which one I got?" The Barton Rose ballroom looked like it had been dipped in gold. Chandeliers dripped crystals like tears. Tables were set with linen napkins folded into origami swans. Every attendee shimmered in designer tuxedos and $600 dresses they'd never wear twice. And me, I was in a satin thrifted gown I'd altered myself, wearing black boots under the hem, and carrying a tote bag full of business cards and tiny wax samples, because I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to be remembered. It wasn't about revenge, I swear. I didn't even know my parents would be honored tonight. I'd heard about the gala through a local art teacher who mentioned it was packed with gallery owners, interior designers, and boutique buyers. A networking dream. And yeah, okay, maybe part of me wondered what it'd feel like to stand in their world again and not flinch. I slipped through the crowd past a tray of foie gras I didn't touch and left my first card on a wine table near the silent auction. Each card had a clean black font on matte ivory paper, citrus and smoke handcrafted candles with attitude, www.citrusandsmokecollective.com. I wasn't flashy. I didn't speak unless someone spoke first. I kept to the corners, a ghost with purpose, until I wasn't. I heard her voice before I saw her. "Is that Harper?" I froze. My mother stood near the center of the ballroom, flanked by donors and downtown politicians like some kind of queen regent. She wore a navy gown that screamed old money. Her smile faltered just for a second before she took a sip of her champagne and motioned for someone to cover the mic. I turned ready to disappear through the corridor of glass, but it was too late. I felt her presence behind me. "Bold of you," she said softly, "showing up here." I turned to face her slowly. "It's a public event, Mom, not a bloodline ceremony." Her eyes narrowed. "You were never good at knowing your place, and you were never good at hiding your distaste." A silence passed between us, sharp, hot, ugly. Then I heard him. "Harper." My father's voice, deeper than I remembered, colder than I expected. "You're not welcome here." He stepped up beside her tux-pressed smile plastic. The room began to shift. Whispers, side eyes, people who didn't know me, but now wanted to. I breathed in through my nose, slow, grounded. "Then it's a good thing," I said quietly, "that I don't need your welcome anymore." And then, calmly, with more poise than I've ever had in their house, I reached into my tote and placed 3 business cards on the table next to their name placards, one for each of them, and one for the memory they just made. I didn't look back, not once. I walked out of that ballroom like I was floating, but I wasn't free of it, not yet. I knew that ache, the slow burn anger, the acidic regret, the heartbreak that tastes like old metal and missed hugs. I got home, took off my boots, cried in the shower for exactly 6 minutes. Then I checked my phone. Notifications exploded. At first I thought it was just Candle Talk doing its thing again. Then I saw it, a blurry 13-second clip posted by some influencer who'd been standing nearby. At Social Cybele, girl boss gets told she's not welcome, leaves with the room in her palm. Who is she? Citrus and smoke #. You go girl, #gala drama the clip. Me, facing my father standing tall in front of their condescension. The comment section on fire, her dress, her poise, her mic drop. What's the link? I need those candles. Someone said this is the daughter of Robert Lane, she's a queen. Okay, who disowns someone this classy? By morning we had 8,000 new followers. Shopify was on the verge of crashing. The You're Not in the Will candle sold out in 3 hours. And me, I made a new scent that night, jasmine and redwood with a kick of clove. I called it Social Funeral, because sometimes the best eulogy is a standing ovation. When BuzzFeed called, I thought it was a prank. I was elbow deep in a batch of Gaslight Me Again, trying to perfect the ratio between bourbon and ash when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Austin area code. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up. Harper Lane speaking. This is Mina from BuzzFeed Features. We're running a piece on small business founders redefining generational wealth. Your name came up 5 times. I blinked. Wait, BuzzFeed. She laughed. Yeah, not some intern with a Canva account. We're legit, and people love your story. I wasn't sure what surprised me more, the call, or how steady my voice was when I said, let's do it. The article dropped 2 days later. Titled, This Candle Girl Got Cut Off and Built a Brand Instead. They quoted me about family pressure, creative freedom, and how being disinherited wasn't the end, just the beginning. They even linked my Shopify in the last paragraph. By noon, we had to shut down new orders for 3 whole product lines. At Citrus and Smoke, we were drowning in joy. Theo was on fulfillment. I was managing the front restocking jars like a madwoman. Our new part-timer Jess, a tattooed, book-loving college dropout, handled customer service like a boss. Our little workshop felt like a revolution with mood lighting. Every time a new order dinged, Theo yelled, "Another one for the rebellion?" I laughed, half hysterical, half exhausted, and yet, beneath the glow of our success, something darker was rising. It started with a headline. Lane and Associates accused of internal harassment by former associates. Then another. Junior staff alleged toxic culture gender bias at elite Austin law firm. And then the leak a recording of my father belittling a female intern during a partner meeting. Her voice cracked as she asked for time off to care for her mother. His reply, "You're not paid to have emotions." The clip went viral. I sat on the couch that night, laptop balanced on my knees, staring at the news ticker like it was fiction. Harper Theo said quietly from the other end of the couch, "You seeing this?" I nodded slowly. He hesitated. "You okay?" I didn't answer. Not right away, because I wasn't sure. Part of me felt sad. Not for them exactly, but for the version of me who used to need their approval. But the other part, the part that burned hotter, that part whispered, "This is karma." Logan called 3 times that night. I didn't answer. Then came the text, "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time, then turned my phone over and walked into the candle room. The next morning, the shop was buzzing both literally and online. Customers flooded the studio. New collabs were offered. A scent subscription box asked if I'd do a custom line. But the moment I'll never forget, a young woman, maybe 22, walked in, clutching a crumpled article printout. I just wanted to say, she whispered, voice shaking, "Thank you for showing people like me that walking away isn't failure, it's survival." I didn't cry then. I waited until she left. Then I went into the back, sat on the floor, and let the tears come slow and hot and ancient. Theo walked in 10 minutes later, a coffee in each hand. He sat down beside me without saying a word, passed me one, and leaned back against the wall. After a while he said, "They're collapsing." I took a sip, bitter grounding, and whispered back, "I know." He glanced at me. "You're not going to help them, are you?" I looked him in the eye. Steady. Sharp. "No," I said. I didn't light the match. But I'm not putting out the fire either. We lit every candle in the room. Not because we had to, but because it felt like a ritual, like claiming the space, like blessing it. I stood in the center of the gallery, now transformed, and looked around slowly, trying to take it all in. The floors were no longer splintered or uneven. We'd sanded and stained every inch of them by hand. The walls wore coats of deep smoky blue and soft amber light. Art from local creators lined the edges, rotating installations curated monthly. Custom shelves, all built by Theo, carried our candle collections with pride. The scent in the room, a blend of wood smoke, orange peel, and something else, victory. We called it a soft launch, but nothing about that night felt soft. The space hummed. People showed up in droves. Locals, online followers, pressed, small business owners and artists who'd heard there was finally a place that got them. They sipped mulled cider from mismatched mugs, sniffed testers, took selfies under the giant quote Theo painted across the east wall. "Light your own damn fire." Noah was there too, helping hang the last set of Edison bulbs that had arrived 2 hours late. He balanced on a ladder with a calm that drove me wild in a good way. "Center that one a little more," I called. He adjusted it without looking down. Bossy. I grinned. Efficient. When he climbed down, he handed me the last bulb like it was fragile gold. "You did this," he said. "All of it." His hand brushed mine just for a second, and I swear, the room got warmer. By the time the crowd started thinning, my cheeks ached from smiling. Jess had refilled the cider 3 times. Theo was already sketching plans for a potential second-floor expansion. That's when I saw him, leaning awkwardly against the back wall, half-shadowed near the plant shelf, like he was afraid to be seen, but too desperate not to show up. Logan, my brother, wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit anymore, and shoes that had seen better days. I felt my stomach knot, then untangle. I walked toward him slowly. "Didn't think you'd come," I said. "Didn't think I could," he replied. "But then, I kept seeing your name everywhere. Your candles. Your story." He hesitated, swallowing hard. And I thought, if I didn't show up now, I never could. I didn't speak. Not yet. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled citrus and smoke business card, the one I'd left at the gala. "I kept it," he said, "every time I thought I was above you. This reminded me I wasn't." His voice cracked just slightly. "I can't believe I'm saying this," he muttered. "But can you hire me?" I stared at him. The brother who used to mock my little jars of wax, the one who once said, "You're not serious until someone else invests in you." And now, here he was, empty-handed, humble, asking for a place to stand. I laughed, not mean, not cruel, just tired, and maybe, just maybe, a little healed. "Start with the bathrooms," I said. "Then we'll talk." He blinked. "Wait, seriously," I nodded. "They need scrubbing, and we're out of paper towels." He stood there for a second, stunned, then laughed softly. "Okay. Yeah. Deal." Later, after we closed up and the fairy lights dimmed, I sat on the floor of the candle room, legs crossed, arms wrapped around my knees, watching the last flame flicker in a jar labeled "Begin Again." Theo plopped down beside me, biting into a leftover lemon bar. "Well," he said through a mouthful that wasn't a launch, "that was a cultural shift." I laughed, resting my head against the wall. He looked at me, then down the hallway toward where Logan was still sweeping. "You think he's really changing?" I shrugged. "I think people don't always deserve a second chance, but sometimes they need one to figure out who they really are." Theo smiled. "You're getting good at this boss thing." "No," I whispered. "I'm getting good at building what they never gave me." It was quiet this year. No suitcases by the door. No last-minute gift bags. No, "Are you sure you want to go back there?" from Theo as I zip up my jacket. This year, I stayed home. I made cinnamon French toast with orange zest, burned morning resolve in the kitchen, wrapped orders for the last-minute panic buyers who couldn't face their parents empty-handed, and then, around noon, when I imagined my family was sitting down to the same overly curated Christmas Eve brunch they hosted every year, I slid a small box into the mail chute across from the studio. No ribbon, no card, no handwritten note, just a matte black box lined with dark moss-colored tissue, and 3 candles, labeled by hand. One said, "Truth cedarwood white sage and bergamot." The second lost, tobacco flower clove and violet ash. And the third, growth pine fig and soil after rain. I didn't expect a response. I didn't even want one. But later that night, my phone buzzed. "Mom? Is this supposed to be funny?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed slowly, "Me no. It's supposed to smell like reflection." No reply after that, just a gray read receipt, which honestly felt perfect. 2 days later, I sat in a cozy podcast studio, feet tucked under me, on a velvet armchair mug of herbal tea sweating in my hands. The host, a sweet, sharp woman named Bryn, leaned toward the mic. "So Harper, your story has kind of exploded this year, from disinherited daughter to candle queen. How do you process that kind of transformation?" I smiled, tired but proud. "You process it the same way you pour a candle," I said. "Slowly, carefully, pour too fast, and it cracks when it cools." Bryn nodded, then leaned into the next question, the one I knew was coming. "And today's topic's reclaiming family holidays. What does that mean to you?" I breathed in deep and slow. "It means I don't wait for the people who hurt me to set the table anymore," I said. "It means I host my own feast. I light my own flame. I make space for people who see me, not for the version they wish I was." Bryn's eyes shimmered a little. "Is it forgiveness?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No, not yet." A pause. Then I added, "But it is clarity, and sometimes that's more powerful." After the episode aired, I got hundreds of messages, some from estranged daughters, some from single dads, one from a grandmother who said she hadn't spoken to her kids in 5 years and was finally ready to try. I printed that one out and taped it to the studio wall next to the receipt from our first ever sale. Later that night, I walked alone through downtown Austin, the Christmas lights still hanging lazily on windows, the air crisp and full of pine and roasted chestnuts from the carts on 6th. I passed a department store window, their holiday display full of mannequins in velvet and crystal. And in the middle, a candle I recognized, one of mine. Growth. Someone must have bought it and donated it for display. I stood there for a minute, smiling like a kid watching a snow globe from the outside. I didn't need them to light it. Just knowing it was their center stage was enough. I didn't go to watch them fall. I went for the desk. That old cherrywood writing desk tucked in the far corner of my childhood bedroom, the one with the secret drawer I used to hide my scented notepads and breakup poems. It wasn't worth much, not to anyone else, but it had my initials carved in pencil beneath the bottom drawer, back when I still believed this house was a forever kind of place. The estate sale wasn't publicized, not formally, but in a town like this, secrets rot quickly in the open. A real estate listing popped up on a private page, 5-bed, 4.5 Bath Hill Country Classic with wine cellar library and motivated sellers. Motivated meant desperate. Everyone knew. People whispered. Even the ones who used to toast my parents at charity galas. Funny how silence can be louder than scandal. I wore a gray sweater, black jeans, no makeup, hair down, shoulders back. No one noticed me when I slipped into the back of the house that Saturday morning, except a woman in pearls and leopard print heels who eyed me like I might break the vase she wasn't buying. I moved quickly through the foyer, past the velvet chairs, the grand mirror, the fireplace that had never once warmed us. Each item wore a yellow tag. Each price was negotiable. Even Legacy had markdowns now. Upstairs, my old room smelled like time. The desk sat in the corner just like I remembered. Scratched, solid, waiting. I knelt beside it, ran my hand across the surface, and opened the middle drawer. There it was. The tiny paper crane I folded in 9th grade when I was grounded for skipping debate team to go sketch at the creek, still tucked into the corner, still here. I placed it gently in my bag, then stood steady, taller. I turned to leave and stopped cold. He was there. My father, suitless, tired, unshaven. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just wasn't looking up at him anymore. "Harper," he said, not surprised, just hollow. "I didn't come to gloat," I said quietly. "Just came for the desk." He nodded once, then stepped into the room slowly like the walls were unfamiliar now. "Place looks different without the shine," he muttered. "Most things do," I replied. There was a long pause. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and offered it to me. I didn't take it. "What's this?" "An offer," he said. "A proposal. A business arrangement." I stared at him. "You're still trying to write my name in the margins of your story," I said. "Even now." He looked down, then back up. "You're successful. You built something real. I was wrong not to see it, but this could help us both." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blink. "No," I said. "It would help you. It would tie me to everything I had to walk away from." He opened his mouth, but I stepped back, shaking my head slowly. "This isn't revenge," I said, voice soft but certain. "This is release." He didn't argue, didn't chase me, just stood there, in the shadow of his own undoing, watching his daughter walk away from a house that once told her she'd never belong. I paid cash for the desk, loaded it into the back of Theo's truck without a word. We didn't speak until we were halfway back to the studio, the hill country sun sinking behind us. He glanced over. "That go how you thought it would." "No," I said, resting my hand on the corner of the desk in the back seat, but it went exactly how it needed to. Later that night I lit a candle called Let Go Chamomile Warm Teak, and just the faintest trace of smoke. I sat at the desk in the candle room, now refinished, sanded clean, and mine again. And for the first time since I was a kid scribbling bad poetry and even worse song lyrics, I wrote something new. The scent in the room was something I couldn't quite name. A little lavender, warm cardamom, maybe a hint of cedar and vanilla, but underneath it all, woven deep into the air, was something else entirely. Pride, the kind you don't buy, the kind you earn one scraped knuckle one quiet morning, one long day at a time. The Citrus and Smoke Collective was full, standing room only. People from all over the city, young artists, small business owners, regulars who'd been there since day one, filled the repurposed gallery with their voices, their laughter, their clinking mugs of mulled wine. The mayor was there too, in sneakers, laughing with Theo by the custom scent bar. We were hosting our first ever open mic night for creatives who were told. No, yeah, that was the real title. Printed on a banner, hand-painted by Jess, and hung slightly crooked across the back wall. The energy in the room crackled not with nerves but belief. One by one people took the stage. A slam poet who was disowned for coming out. A ceramicist who used to work in tech but walked away to teach kids. A singer with a voice like whiskey and grief who wrote songs about her dad leaving. Every story cracked something open. Every voice stitched something new. I was supposed to close the night, not with a performance, just a few words, but I couldn't stop watching the door. I didn't know why, or maybe I did. And then 15 minutes before the end, it opened, quietly, and in walked my mother, not in a designer suit, not in heels, but in worn jeans, a plain sweater, and sneakers that looked borrowed. She held something in her hands, small, round, wrapped in foil. I recognized it immediately. Her pecan pie. She hadn't baked it in years. Not since before everything. I didn't move, didn't speak. She walked toward me slowly, carefully, like the room might collapse if she moved too fast. When she reached me, she didn't offer excuses. Didn't perform. She just said quietly, I came to listen, not to talk. I looked at her, really looked. And without a word, I pointed to the front row. There was an empty chair, waiting. She took it, hands folded in her lap, and for once, she didn't look like she needed to control the moment. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the mic. I took a deep breath. The room quieted like it had done this before, like it knew. I looked out over the crowd, at faces full of warmth and waiting. I looked at my mother, seated silent still, and then I spoke. Sometimes I said, voice steady, the people who write you off. I paused. Let the words breathe. End up reading your story anyway. The applause didn't come right away, not because they didn't feel it, but because they were holding it, like something sacred. Then like a spark, it broke loose, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was performing to prove anything. I was just witnessing the light we'd all built together. Later that night, when the crowd had thinned and the fairy lights dimmed, my mother approached again. She didn't say much, just placed the pie on the counter beside the sign that read, Build what they said you couldn't. I didn't know how to be anything but proud, she said softly, but I should have started with kind. I didn't answer. Not then. I just nodded slow-measured and let her walk away. Some things don't need an answer right away. Some things just need to be heard. The dress fit perfectly. Deep emerald silk, off-shoulder dramatic slit, the kind of gown you wear when you know people will be watching and you're ready for it. But the moment I stepped into the ballroom, it felt wrong. Not the dress, not the spotlight, the weight. Chandeliers glittered above rows of round tables dressed in gold. Champagne flowed like waterfalls. Every woman in the room sparkled in sequins and satin in hard-won power. The stage glowed with violet lights, the banner behind it reading Women in Business Awards, presented by Texas Impact. My name was printed in elegant script on the program. Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year, Citrus and Smoke from Disinherited to Disruptor. It should have felt like everything I worked for. Instead, it felt like a glass too full. One small shake and it'd spill. Theo sat beside me, clean-shaven, uncharacteristically in a blazer. You good? He asked, low voice, leaning close. I nodded, then shook my head. He offered a slow smile. Well, just so you know, if you faint I'm stealing your award and pretending it was for ceramic innovation, I smiled barely. But then, the phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, almost let the moment have its way. But when I saw her name, Mom, I felt it in my chest. The message was short. He's in the hospital. Stress-induced cardiac event. He keeps asking if he was wrong about you. Time shifted. The music faded. The speeches blurred. The sparkle turned hollow. I turned to Theo. I have to go. He didn't ask. He just stood up with me, placed a steady hand on my shoulder, and said, "Go." St. John's Medical Center always smelled like lemon wipes, an old fear, the kind that settles in the corners of your lungs and never fully leaves. I found him in room 214, no visitors, no flowers, just machines, a tired man, and too many things unsaid. He looked small. That was the first thing I noticed. My father, the man who once stood behind podiums and signed off on million-dollar deals, looked like he was made of paper and pride. His eyes opened when I stepped in. No anger, no command, just silence. I sat beside him. No words at first, just breath, machines, the hum of life struggling to behave. Finally he spoke. "You came." I nodded. "I didn't think you would. I didn't think I would either." A beat passed, then another. "I was wrong," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "About everything." I stayed still. "I thought legacy was something you protect." He continued like a safe or a trophy, "But it's not." He turned his head, looked at me with eyes that didn't demand anymore. "It's what people remember when you're gone." And I was building a house of fear. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to say, "Yes, you were." I wanted to ask him if he remembered what it felt like to hand me a legal letter on Christmas. I wanted to say, "It's too late." But I didn't, because something in his face, in the slow collapse of that carefully built armor, made me understand he knew. I wasn't there to forgive, not yet, but I was there to hear him, for the first time, and maybe for the last. Back at the studio, I returned after midnight. The windows glowed warm, soft light spilling into the street like a welcome mat I didn't know I needed. I unlocked the door, stepped into the scent of sweet tobacco and orange blossom. And then I saw it. Strung across the back wall between the shelves of candles and community artwork was a hand-painted banner, "From Burned Bridges to Bright Beginnings, Citrus and Smoke Year 1. Tiny string lights framed the edges. A fresh bouquet sat on the counter, lemon bars in a bakery box from our favorite shop, and in the corner, Logan asleep in a folding chair, paint still on his hands. I didn't cry. I just stood there. Let the quiet hold me. Let the year unfold all over again in my head, and then with a breath that felt like a new kind of exhale, I smiled. The line stretched around the block, not for a concert, not for a sale, but for us, for this little place we'd carved out from wood and grit and rejection. Citrus and Smoke 1 year later wasn't just a candle shop, it was a lighthouse for the disinherited, the overlooked, the ones who were told you're too much or you'll never make it. Tonight, they made it here. Jess was handing out cider in reusable cups stamped with our logo. Theo was grinning at a group of indie perfumers asking about a co-branded line. Logan, now in a branded crew neck that read, "Flame Assistant," was helping a teenage sculptor unload a crate of clay. And me, I stood near the back mic in hand, trying to decide how to start. The lights were low, the scent in the air was our anniversary blend, ember and bloom gardenia oud and sandalwood. I took a breath. The crowd hushed. And then I spoke. 1 year ago, I began voice catching for a split second. I got the worst Christmas gift I'd ever received. Light laughter rippled through the room, the kind that says we've been there, but it pushed me toward the best one I'd ever given myself. I paused, let the weight settle. The gift of choosing my own story. The applause was immediate, loud, unfiltered, honest. And when it faded, I added, and the best part? It's not just mine anymore. It belongs to you, every artist, every creator, every person who thought they had to wait for permission to become who they already are. When I stepped off stage, hugs followed. So did tears. So did a stack of signed cards from customers who'd flown in from 5 states just to be here. And then I saw her. My mother, standing in the back, no blazer, no gold necklace, just jeans, a linen blouse, and her hair pulled back like she'd done it herself maybe for the first time in decades. She didn't walk toward me, she waited. And when I finally approached, she reached into her bag, not with ceremony but with care, and pulled out a small sealed envelope. "It's not a will," she said, eyes never quite meeting mine. "It's an apology." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't want to, but because for once the silence said enough. I took it, held it in both hands, not like something owed, but like something fragile. Then I turned and walked to the front of the studio. Outside the large front windows, Logan was laughing with a young painter as they positioned a ceramic candle holder in the display case. The kid looked maybe 19, all nervous energy and bright ideas. I watched my brother gently tilt the holder, then nod. He wasn't performing. He wasn't proving. He was showing up. Beside me, I felt a familiar warmth wrap around my waist. Noah. He didn't say anything right away, just stood there still, his hand resting softly at my hip. Then with a quiet certainty that only he could make sound profound, he said, "You changed more than your life you know." I looked up. "You changed all of ours." And I believed him, not because I wanted to, but because I'd finally seen it, in the eyes of a stranger holding their first sale, in the forgiveness wrapped up inside an envelope, in the strength of a brother sweeping up stories instead of burying them. I didn't open the letter that night. I didn't need to. Some gifts aren't meant to be read immediately. Some are meant to breathe like wax, like legacy, like a story finally told on your own terms.